Hey, Crazy Will here. Today we're going to be talking about prop building. If you have a 3D printer and you want to know how to finish off those 3D prints, this video is for you. Stay tuned! Hey, Crazy Will here from Crazy Will's Tech Show. Today, I'm going to show you how to finish off 3D printed props. You might say to yourself, Will, what do you know about prop building? I've had a 3D printer for over a year now, and here's some of my projects. So yes, I do have some experience building up some props. I made some lightsabers, an Iron Man helmet, quite a few things that I had to learn some skills and get it working correctly. And I'm going to share that with you today. So today, we're actually going to be working on a 3D printed Robocop gun. There goes my demonetization. You can see YouTube. Oh my God, he said gun. That's what I wanted. I wanted one of those. I wanted one of those since I was a little kid. Now I'm going to leave a link for this prop down below if you want to follow along. It was made by, the username was Old Legamori. But this can be used for basically anything. Anything that you want to make, whether it be a gun, a lightsaber, a sword, anything prop related. Let's get started with the video. I'm going to show you the pieces that I have printed so far. I'm going to show you how to put them together, and I'm going to show you how to paint them. So this paint scheme is not a big paint scheme. It's mainly about how to finish it off. I have two techniques that I want to show you throughout this video that I'm going to use to finish this model off. So let's get over to the workbench and get started, shall we? Alright, so here are all the pieces that I 3D printed. This one only was 5 pieces. We got the top piece here. We got the handle, which is 2 pieces, and we're going to put those together. You got barrel, then I'm going to call it the underbarrel. Basically, the pieces fit in together like so to make Robocop's gun. So what we're going to be doing is gluing this together. Before we do it, we want to just glue this piece together because we got seams going around it, and it'll be easier to fill in those seams when we don't have the rest of the gun. So we're going to sand the back of this because this is super smooth and it's going to be hard to glue. What I'm going to do is take a piece of sandpaper. It doesn't matter what grit, we just want to rough up the surface. This just happens to be 400 grit. It's just what I have laying around right now. You want to rough up the surface, go across, and then the other way. And what we're doing is we're just making something for the glue to stick to. So we're going to do the same thing to the other side. I would suggest getting some clamps. These are the clamps that I have. So now we're just going to add our glue. And I'm using regular super glue. That's it. That's all I use. Sometimes the gel will be easier. Sometimes the liquid will be easier. There's only one glue that I haven't had too much luck with, which is Gorilla Glue. I'm not a big fan of it. This is where you want to be careful. I like to sandwich them, kind of slide them a little bit. Sometimes if you slide them, you could accidentally lock them into place, so be careful when you do the slide. Mainly I had that problem with resin models, but you never know. So what we want to try and do is line this up best we can. We'll look at it as much as you can before the glue sticks. Let's take one of these clamps. Alright, not too tight, just tight enough to hold it. Try to do it on flat surfaces. Alright, we'll let that set. I like to let it sit for about an hour. Alright, so it's been sitting for an hour. We're going to detach this and make sure that it glued together. And it seems pretty tight. It looks like I got a little off on certain parts. Like I could see right there, we're going to have to do something about the trigger. It's a little off where the magazine is, which is fine. You try to do it the best you can, guys, but in the end, you're going to have to do repairs. Alright, so I'm just taking regular sandpaper, 100 grit. This is a little rougher. I don't know if you guys could see it. I'm going to try and show you right there. You see there's a little bit of a tip right at the bottom of the trigger. It's a hard piece to get to. I wish I would have saw it beforehand and kind of sanded it out then, but you know, sometimes you don't realize this stuff until you do it. So I'm going to just take this and I'm going to work it up and down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go this way with it because I don't want to go across because that might break the trigger. So we're just going to go up and down and we're just going to sand. Another thing that I like to share with people is nail files. Really inexpensive. You can get these really cheap, and you can see like this didn't line up correctly. So I'm going to try and sand that down. And nail files are nice because they're rigid, and you can just get in there and go to town and kind of flatten out those edges. And this is where it's going to connect, so I want it to be as best as possible. Parts like that, I'm going to work on that a little bit more. Where the magazine is, you can see there's a little bit of a lip there. We're going to try and sand that down as much as we can. And try to do the best you can, but if it's not working out, don't worry. We can add putty and paint and make it what it ain't. Just try to get it down as much as you can because it's less work in the long run. With prop building, it's a lot a lot of sanding, and a lot of it you're not going to see because I'm going to do it a lot off camera. I wanted to show you guys this real quick. There's a big lip. I don't know how well you can see it, but there's a big lip there. This is such a big piece. To sand this down probably wouldn't make any sense, so what we're going to do is we're going to use some filler to fill that in, and then I'll sand it and round it off so that way you won't notice it. So, you know, a lot of the stuff we're going to be fudging and make it work where it's not working. We're up to the part where we're going to add some of this Bondo. You want to go with the glazed spot putty. This is about $10 in US dollars. Fill in these cracks that we're going to go for and some of the layer lines. We're going to use this. I'm not going to go too crazy with the layer lines. I have another idea for that. Big humps like this, stuff in the trigger, just to smooth all this out. We're going to go in there and just add some of the spot putty. Alright, you probably hear my fan in the background, and I also have a 3D print going. Really planned this video out well. You want to wear gloves because you don't want this stuff getting on your hands, and you don't want to breathe this in, so if you have a respirator, it might be a good idea. Or in a well-ventilated area. I am going to be putting my respirator on. Just keep an eye on the detail. You don't want to get rid of the detail. So stuff like in here, you want to try and scoop that out. You don't want to be messing around with that. And remember, if you don't get it right, you can redo it again. I'm putting it on very sloppy. Alright, so we're going to let that dry, and then I'll go ahead and do the sanding job. Now, normally I don't hit the Bondo until I do my priming on this, so that way I can really see what I'm doing. But in this case, there was a large gap, and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to let the outside of this dry first, and then we'll go for the inside of the trigger area. Alright, so it's probably been about an hour. I had other things to do. I'm going to take 400 grit sandpaper again. I would wear a ventilator mask. I'm not at this current moment because I'm showing you guys how to do this. And I'm going to sand light. So we're just going to gently sand the edges down. You can see one of the edges is coming through already, which is fine. We're going to use filler. We're going to see if that'll do the trick. I'm going to kind of smooth it out. Wear a respirator. Certain spots you want to do 100 grit or a 200 grit. It also helps to have a wet paper towel to wipe away the dust as you're going. You want to try and flatten out those edges. So I'm going to keep sanding at this, and I'll come back to you after I'm done. Alright, so this is where I'm at so far. I cleaned this up a little bit. I got that nice and smooth. Doesn't look super smooth, but once you spray paint it, it looks a lot better. I did go too thick with this stuff. I went too thick. So it actually went with 250 sandpaper so I could scrape it down really low, and then went over it with the 400 grit. It's just a very time-consuming process, and we're probably going to have to repeat a lot of this. This part, I mean, I think I got this pretty good. You don't really know until you throw some spray paint over it and then you sand it again. So for now, I'm going to let that sit, and then I'm going to finish this up, and then I'll come back to you guys. Alright, so this is where we're at now. Looks like crap, but it's smooth. You can't really see it in video, but it is pretty smooth. There's some parts that need to be smoothed out a little bit more and can fill in the holes and make it look better. But we got all underneath there done. I went a little too heavy before with the Bondo. I'm going to try and do around the trigger. I sanded it the best I could, but you can still see there's a line in there. So I'm going to try and take less is more kind of technique on this part. I'm going to take the Bondo again. I'm going to just do a little dab. You know, sometimes we get a little too crazy with trying to do stuff and we're not thinking, and I got way too much on this before, and like I said, you know, a lot of trial and error, guys, you know. And what I'm doing is I'm actually pushing towards, there's a lip hanging out, so the side that's giving me more problems, I'm trying to push more of the lip out there. I'm trying to use some of these tools to shape this a little bit better so I have less sanding to do. For example, around the trigger right here. It's a prop. It's going to take a lot of work. There's just some large gaps that it's hard to get to, and sometimes, you know, you have to ask yourself, is this really worth it? You know, is anybody really going to notice it? Sometimes you got to be that way, you know. I mean, I hate saying it like that. You want to try and build the best props you possibly can. Sometimes that's the truth, you know. Why are you killing yourself for something that no one's going to see? And I do that all the time with my stuff. high and low points. I'm gonna hit that with a very small, minute amount, fill it in. Because sometimes there's air gaps that get in this, and there's nothing you can do about that. So you just gotta go over, you're gonna be doing this process over a lot. You know, you're gonna be doing it and then filling it in, and then cleaning it out, and then filling it back in, and then cleaning it out, and you know, you wanna kind of put it on in layers and make it look good. So I'm just gonna gently go over some of this stuff that I see is gonna be a problem. So I'm going to let it sit for about an hour. Another part that we're going to have to tackle is this piece right here. These lines from my reference picture, and I'll show you a picture of that right here. These lines, this should be one piece. Now this piece on top, this line right here is fine. We're not going to fill that in because if you look at the picture, that's part of the piece that moves when it shoots. So we don't have to, it has to have a line there. We want to keep that. But this part down here doesn't. So we're going to have to tackle that because that's supposed to be one piece. Alright, so I sanded it again. I could probably go over it another coat, but honestly, I want to spray paint this and see how smooth it is. It feels really smooth. Some areas it looks a little rough. I got probably about 2 hours into this piece now, and it's going to be a lot of sanding, guys. I'm going to spray paint it with this primer filler, 2-in-1, Rust-Oleum, sandable. It's a filler and a sander. So I'm going to hit it with this and then come back to you. Alright, so I apologize for the fan, but I'm painting stuff right now. Through a layer of that spray paint, it was just a thin layer, so it's nothing heavy, and it's going to get rid of a lot of these layer lines as it's already doing. But now we can go around the edges and see where we need to just add a little bit more, like I see it right here. I don't know if you can see that on camera. I see a little dip there, a little dip there. So I'm going to go through this. The reason why I did this is you can get a better view of what needs work. So we'll let this dry up, give it about an hour, and then we'll come back and we'll try to sand that down. Alright, you gotta bear with me, guys. While I'm making this video, I got a cold, a really bad cold. It's not COVID. They tested me for a bunch of stuff. I went to the doctors for over 2 hours twice already, and first time they refused to do a COVID test, and they said it was just a sore throat or some kind of allergies. And then the second time they tested me for strep throat, they came up negative, and then they tested me for mono. So I don't know what's going on with me, but I've been in and out of this for 3 weeks now, so it's driving me nuts. But anyway, this is as far as I want to go with it. I mean, it's not bad. There are spots that I don't like on it, but, and you could go as crazy as you want. I did 3 coats on this. In between those 3 coats, I did spot putty, and I cleaned up the trigger, and I cleaned up a lot of the pieces in here. The trigger piece could be better. I might go back in that afterwards, but I want to get to the next step of actually putting together the gun. I'm going to put the whole gun together and make sure that this is lined up correctly, and I got all this hooked up correctly. And I'm going to have a little bit of trouble. I'm probably going to have to sand a little bit, and I probably didn't line that up as good. So yeah, you can see there's a gap there. So I'm going to try and mill that out a little bit. It's probably just this little tab right here. But the filler, as you can see, the primer filler does a really good job of filling in a lot of the gap. It's going to get hit again. So that's 3 coats on it. And normally, if you're doing something like this, I'd say only do 3 coats because then you start losing detail. But something like this, it's so big that you might have to hit it quite a few times to really fill in the gaps. And I would highly recommend getting one of these. It's a Dremel, and you can just sand. You just got to be careful with this because you can really melt the plastic. Put that off to the side and see if this will, yeah, see that made all the difference. As you can see, it closed the gap quite a bit. And that's kind of why I want to put this gun together now. I want to make sure all the pieces are going to fit correctly and I'm not going to have any problems. I'm doing 240 here, just some stuff that I had laying around. And it's alright if this floats a little bit on top of here, because if you ever held a real gun, you know the top slide, you slide it back. It usually slides back like that. Again, I want to sand the top of this because we want to make it malleable and give it something to stick to. Again, I like the basic super glue. You can try other stuff. This is the stuff that's been working the best for me. Throw a little bit on this. Pull a clamp on it like that. That should be good. We'll let that do its thing. Let that sit for an hour. The next thing is we're going to go for is this piece right here. Don't have another clamp. I should have planned this through a little bit better, but I do have some painter's tape. I'm just going to hit it. As you can see, it's lined up nicely, and I'm going to have to fill in that gap. So we got this piece and this piece. Starting to look like a gun, guys. Alright, so I'm left with this. I noticed right off the bat that this is crooked. I don't know why. I didn't sand it that much for it to make it crooked, so I'm thinking something went wrong with the print, because when I try to put it together, I got this big old gap. So what I'm going to try and do is, I guess, I'm going to try and take this off and hopefully not ruin my good piece. It's right on camera so you guys can see me mess up. Well, anyway, I gotta take that out now. But what I want to do is put this together like this, and we're gonna take a caliber and we're gonna try and adjust the model. Instead of us trying to fill that gap, I mean, you could easily fill that gap if you wanted to and play that game. We have a 3D printer. Why not just go ahead and see if we can just 3D print that piece and see if we can make it fit just a little bit better. And it looks like 49.9. And we're not counting up for the nub that was there, so I wish I didn't break that off, but I will try and figure out what the calculation for that is, and I think I'm gonna reprint this. So still getting over my cold, guys. I apologize. Alright, so fresh off the printer, guys. I said that this piece, not counting the tip, would be 49. It came out to 50.2, which, expanding of the printer, I should have went smaller, but I didn't. I did notice there was a little bit of a problem. If you try to line these up, and it's probably more my fault than anything else, there's a gap. Something got a little messed up there. So you can see there's a big old gap right there. I'm just going to fill that in with putty, which is not a big deal. I don't know how I managed to do that, but what I'm going to do to try to keep this straight is I'm going to glue this piece on to here, and I'm going to have to do what I didn't want to do to begin with, was put a whole bunch of putty on this. So no big deal. I'm going to glue this like this, but it did fix a lot of the problem that I was having with the bending. Either it didn't print right or I didn't align it right. So this is just part of the process of making these types of models. When you're having pieces like this, sometimes things just don't work right. I see where I went wrong. I'm going to show you my mistake because that way you guys can learn. I should have lined this up on the gun better. Apparently I wasn't paying attention. This should have probably been over a little bit more. What I'll probably do is just fill and make this side flat, and then this side make it just look like that. No one would notice it. If I didn't point it out to you, you guys probably wouldn't have noticed it. Live and learn. I mean, you could see where I kind of messed up. You probably can't see it on camera that much. I could see it in person. It upsets me, but so I'm just going to put some tape around this just to hold it where I want it. You just gotta correct your mess up. Putty and paint, make it what it ain't. Alright, so I got it together. If you look at the bottom, anyway, there's gaps. And I didn't do it correctly. Part of it was part of the model, another part of it was me. Instead of me trying to use the putty, because I want to be able to sculpt it a little bit, I'm going to be using some of this DAS air drying clay. And I got these at the dollar store, so we're going to use those to sculpt it. I'm not going to show you how exactly to sculpt it. I'm going to do a little bit of it, show you what the process is, but then I'm going to go ahead and finish this off video. I keep this in a plastic bag. It's just air drying clay, and I like it because I can work with my hands more than I can with the spot putty, because breathing that in and touching it is not a good idea. Alright, so the big gap right here is what I want to fill in first. I'm going to take some of this clay, I'm going to work it a little bit, I'm going to try and fill in that gap. So the first thing I want to do is just try to fill in everything, and once I fill it in, I'll try and smooth it and then sculpt it. So I'm going to just focus on this part right here. What we'll do is we'll wet our hands. It's just water in a spray bottle, and this makes it so you can just smooth it in. Alright, so hopefully you can get the idea why I wanted to do it this way. It's just easier to control. It will take longer to dry, but I think the result is going to be very good. I think I got all the major gaps. I think a lot of the filler primer will fill in a lot of the stuff that I don't want. We'll just let that dry overnight. Good rule of thumb is to leave a piece of clay out next to it so you can see how dry it is. Alright, so here we are. This is after the clay. I put one coat on it and then I sanded a little bit, and that needs to be fixed up because you can see the lines are not correct right there. On the other side, it turned out fine. Probably just a little bit more filler, but now you can really see how the filler is really filling in. Like if you look at these screws, it's filling in a lot of the edges. I'm gonna add a little bit more clay and sand it down and throw some more filler on it, and then we'll get to painting this bad boy. I haven't been feeling good, like I said throughout this video, so this is taking a lot longer for me than usual. You know, it's not a race, guys. What I think I'm gonna do is, this is just gonna be an example of what I want to do. I took a piece that did not come out right when I was printing this. It is glossy black that I put over it, and then I added chrome over it. I just did a little bit of speckle of chrome. So just to give you an idea of what I want to to do with the paint scheme, and we'll get into that more as we go on. Right now what I want to try and do is take some clay, fill in some of these areas. Some of these areas are just not coming out correctly. Works really well, as you guys could see. Alright, just to show you guys real quick what I got done. Filled in some of that, filled out some of that here, tried to layer that to make it less noticeable because it's a little off, and then filled in some of the gap here and added some of the gap there. The rest of this came out really good. I'm gonna let that dry, sand it, and then hit it with filler primer. I did a little bit more clay fill in and I sprayed it again. So I think I sprayed this with several coats. I think I'm up to like 7 coats. You can fix this up even more. I'm done. I'm at the point with this project where I'm like, this is good enough. I tried fixing the wavy lines in here. You can kind of barely see it. Probably still can see it pretty well, but on this side it's perfect. Just for showing purposes, this is where I'm at. I have this left over and it's a glossy black that I used on my lightsaber project, so I'm going to go ahead with this and I'm going to spray it all black to begin with. What I like to do is just wipe it down with a wet rag. I blow it off first and then I wipe it down. Then we're just going to let it dry for about an hour, and then we'll put another coat on it, and we'll get it going from there. I'm also working on another project above there. Can you guess what that is? This is about 3 coats of this glossy black. I would use a flat black. I don't like using the glossy colors because I have to let this sit for several days before I want to do the last spray of metallic over this to give it a tone. That's going to be more like this. It came out really good. I think it looks good. It hides a lot of the lines. That's where I was having problem areas. I think with the metallic it'll hide up nice. I'm very happy with it. The next step is to put some of the metallic overspray on it. I'm going to let this sit for probably about 3 days, and then I'm going to tape up this right here. I want to tape out the handle, and I want to tape out the bottom of this magazine. Alright, so it's been about 4 days that I just haven't had a chance to get to this, and the weather hasn't been nice, so what we're going to do today is painter's tape. I'm going to outline some of this handle. And the reason why we waited so long, this is a glossy finish. You probably won't have to do it if you do a matte finish. You just wait a day or two. And the glossy likes to, it leaves smudges and it likes to be a problem. So. Alright, so here we are. The gun is taped up. I wanted the bottom piece to be completely black, and I wanted this to be completely black. Now, you can be a little forgiving if you overlap. Like if you go into the black part of this, you go back and touch it up. But with the spray, you don't have forgiveness there because we're going to be doing a mist. And when I say we're going to be doing a mist, we're going to be doing it with metallic, 2X, Ultra Coat, Rust-Oleum, metallic, aluminum. I love this stuff. It does a really nice metallic finish. I've actually used this for some lightsabers that I made, but we're not going to be spraying it with this. We're going to be just misting it to just give it a reflective kind of metallic look. It's going to look hopefully a lot like this. It just gives it still black, it just has a metallic kind of feel to it. So that's what I'm going for. So let's go do that. Alright, so I think I overdid it with the overspray, which I'm going to see after I take the tape off of it. Let's see how it looks. I was just trying to get a little metallic look, and I kind of went crazy. It's hard to gauge, which is fine. We're probably going to go over it again with the black and dull this down, but I just want to see how it's going to look with the black. Let's take all this tape off and see how we did. Got the kind of handle look we wanted to, and we could keep it like this. I mean, it does have that kind of metallic gun feel. I think I'm going to hit it with some more black again, so it almost has like a two-tone kind of look to it. It looks cool. It just to me, it just needs to be toned down a little bit. Alright, so this is a little bit more to my liking. I went over it again with the black to break it up a little bit. This is kind of what I wanted. It's got kind of the two-tone. It's really black, but it's got the two-tone. For me, this is a finished product for me. This is as far as I'm willing to go with this. I finally got this done. So for me, it took over 3 weeks for this to get done because we had the holidays and I got deathly ill. All in all, this came out pretty good. We got the two-tone, we got the black, we got the screws where I took them out. They have a little bit of silver on them, so they kind of look like they're a black silverish screw. All right, she's finished. That is a big freaking gun. Now, I don't know how well the metallic is showing up on camera view right now. I hope there's a clear definition between the handle and the actual gun. I tried to give it that sparkly black finish. I like it. And this is gonna probably go right up behind me here. I'm gonna definitely put this in here, but this is finished. So yeah, that's the finished product, guys. So if you wanna make props, those are some techniques that I use on a regular basis. You can do way better than me probably if you sand it down and you spend the time with it. I was just trying to get this video done, and this is a simple prop for me. It's just gonna be hanging up on the wall. It's just a little bit of a showpiece. Like I said, ever since I was a kid, I always wanted one. That's it for me, guys. Make sure you like and subscribe if this helped you in any way. And remember to ring that bell if you enjoy my content. You wanna see more of my craziness, definitely ring that bell. That way you get notifications when I make videos. And remember, you could do anything if you put your mind to it. Later, guys.
Drop it! Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
It's over. That's it, guys. I mean, there's other videos up there, or if you want to do me a huge favor, click the like button, or subscribe button's even better.